Marcus Wilson sat in his small apartment and looked at the bills on his kitchen table. The rent notice was bright red. The electric bill was past due. His bank account had only $43 left. He put his head in his hands and sighed deeply. 6 months ago, Marcus had finished college with a music degree. He had studied piano for 4 years. His teachers said he was talented. His friends said he would be famous one day. But now, sitting in his tiny apartment, Marcus felt like those dreams were just silly wishes. Every day, Marcus looked for work as a musician. He called music schools, but they said they had enough teachers. He went to restaurants and hotels, but they said they did not need a piano player. He even tried to play on the street corner, but people walked by without stopping. Some dropped coins in his hat, but it was never enough money to pay his bills. Marcus grew up in a small town called Millfield. His mother worked at the local bank, and his father fixed cars. They were not rich, but they had enough money to live. When Marcus was 7 years old, his grandmother gave him an old piano. It was scratched and some keys did not work well, but Marcus loved it. Every day after school, Marcus would sit at that old piano and play. At first, he could only play simple songs. But as he got older, he learned harder pieces. His mother saved money to pay for piano lessons. His teacher, Mr. Roberts, was an old man who had once played in big concert halls. He taught Marcus how to read music and how to make beautiful sounds with his fingers. In high school, Marcus was the best piano player in his school. He won competitions and played at school concerts. Everyone said he should study music in college. His parents were proud but worried. They knew that making money as a musician was hard. But Marcus promised them he would find a way to make it work. College was wonderful for Marcus. He learned about different types of music. He played with other students in concerts. He wrote his own songs. His favorite professor, Dr. Martinez, told him he had real talent. She said he could be a professional pianist if he worked hard enough. But when Marcus finished college, the real world hit him like a cold wind. No one wanted to hire a young pianist with no experience. The few jobs he found paid very little money. He tried giving piano lessons, but he could only find 3 students. They paid him $20 each week. That was not enough to live on. Marcus had to find other work to pay his bills. He worked at a coffee shop in the morning. He delivered food at night. He cleaned offices on weekends. His hands, which used to only touch piano keys, now carried heavy boxes and scrubbed floors. His fingers started to feel rough and tired. The worst part was that Marcus had no time to practice piano. When he came home from work, he was too tired to play. His old piano sat in the corner of his apartment, covered with dust. Sometimes he would look at it and feel sad. It reminded him of his dreams that seemed so far away now. Marcus tried to stay positive. He told himself that this was just temporary. He would find a music job soon. But as weeks turned into months, he started to lose hope. Maybe his parents were right to worry. Maybe being a musician was just a foolish dream. One morning, Marcus was drinking coffee and looking at job websites on his computer. Most of the jobs were for things he did not want to do. Sales jobs, office work, factory jobs. Then he saw something different. The Harmony Concert Hall was looking for maintenance workers. The pay was decent and they offered health insurance. Marcus had heard of the Harmony Concert Hall. It was the most famous music venue in the city. Big orchestras played there. Famous pianists gave concerts on its stage. Marcus had always dreamed of playing there one day. Now he was thinking about cleaning its bathrooms. He stared at the job posting for a long time. Part of him felt like applying for this job was giving up on his dream. But the practical part of his mind knew he needed steady work. At least he would be around music even if he was not making it. Marcus wrote his application carefully. He did not mention his music degree. He focused on his other work experience. He wrote about how reliable and hardworking he was. He said he would take good care of the building. When he sent the application, he felt both hopeful and sad at the same time. 3 days later, Marcus got a phone call. A woman named Mrs. Chen wanted to interview him for the maintenance job. She sounded kind but serious. She told him to come to the concert hall the next morning at 9 o'clock. Marcus spent that evening trying to decide what to wear. He wanted to look professional, but he did not want to look too fancy for a cleaning job. He chose simple black pants and a white shirt. He polished his shoes and combed his hair neatly. That night, Marcus could not sleep well. He kept thinking about walking into the concert hall where his heroes had performed. He imagined the beautiful piano on the stage. He wondered if he would ever get to touch it, even just to clean it. When morning came, Marcus ate a quick breakfast and walked to the concert hall. The building was magnificent. It had tall columns and big windows. There were posters advertising upcoming concerts. Marcus saw one for a famous pianist he had studied in college. The ticket prices were more money than Marcus made in a week. Marcus took a deep breath and walked through the main entrance. Inside, the lobby was beautiful. The ceiling was high and painted with angels. There were crystal lights hanging down. The floors were shiny marble. Marcus had never been inside such a fancy building. A woman appeared from behind a desk. She was small and had gray hair pulled back neatly. She wore a simple black dress and comfortable shoes. She walked toward Marcus with a warm smile. This was Mrs. Chen, the person who would decide if Marcus got the job. She looked at him carefully as if she was trying to see what kind of person he was. Marcus stood up straight and tried to look confident, even though his heart was beating fast. Mrs. Chen shook his hand firmly and said it was time to begin the interview. Mrs. Chen led Marcus through the beautiful lobby of the concert hall. Their footsteps echoed on the marble floor. Marcus tried not to stare at everything around him, but it was hard. He had never seen such a fancy place up close. Mrs. Chen walked quickly, but she talked in a calm voice. She told Marcus about the concert hall while they walked. The building was over 100 years old. Famous musicians from all over the world had performed there. The hall could hold 2,000 people when it was full. They walked past huge paintings of composers that Marcus recognized. Mozart, Beethoven, Chopin. These were the men whose music Marcus had studied and loved since he was a child. Seeing their faces on the wall made him feel both excited and sad. He was so close to the world of music, but he would only be cleaning it. Mrs. Chen stopped at her office. It was a small room filled with papers and schedules. The walls were covered with photographs of concerts and events. Marcus could see that Mrs. Chen loved her job. Every picture showed her smiling with musicians and performers. She sat behind her desk and asked Marcus to sit in the chair across from her. She looked at his application and asked him questions about his work experience. Marcus told her about his jobs at the coffee shop, the delivery work, and cleaning offices. He was honest about everything, but he did not mention his music background. Mrs. Chen seemed pleased with his answers. She said they needed someone reliable, who would take care of the building properly. The concert hall was not just a workplace, she explained. It was a special place where magic happened every night. The person who cleaned it had to understand that. After the interview, Mrs. Chen offered to show Marcus around the building. This was the part he had been both wanting and dreading. She led him through hallways lined with photos of famous performances. They walked past practice rooms where he could hear musicians rehearsing. Finally, they reached the main concert hall. Mrs. Chen opened the heavy doors, and Marcus stepped inside. His breath caught in his throat. The space was enormous and beautiful. Red velvet seats filled the floor and balcony. The ceiling was painted with stars and clouds. Crystal chandeliers hung down like frozen fireworks. But what made Marcus's heart skip was the stage. In the center sat the most beautiful piano he had ever seen. It was a black Steinway grand piano that seemed to shine under the stage lights. Marcus knew this piano was worth more money than he could ever imagine. He had read about this exact piano in music magazines. Famous pianists spoke about it like it was a living thing. Mrs. Chen noticed Marcus staring at the piano. She smiled and said it was indeed special. The piano had been donated to the hall 50 years ago by a wealthy family. Since then, it had been played by some of the greatest pianists in the world. Every note that came from it was pure and perfect. She led Marcus closer to the stage. He could see the piano keys clearly now. They were white and black, just like the old piano in his apartment. But these keys looked like they had been carved from precious stones. Marcus's fingers tingled. He wanted so badly to touch them, just once. Mrs. Chen began explaining what Marcus's job would involve. He would arrive early each morning before the musicians came to practice. He would clean the lobby, the hallways, the dressing rooms, and the main hall. He would empty trash cans, vacuum carpets, and polish the wooden surfaces. The most important part of his job, Mrs. Chen said, would be taking care of the stage area. The piano needed special attention. It had to be dusted carefully every day with specific cloths and cleaning solutions. The stage floor had to be perfect, with no dust or marks that might distract the performers. Mrs. Chen was very serious when she talked about the piano. She told Marcus that this instrument was the heart of the concert hall. Many people would touch it every day, pianists, piano tuners, stage crew. But the person who cleaned it had the biggest responsibility. Any damage to the piano would be a disaster. She showed Marcus the special cleaning supplies kept in a locked cabinet backstage. There were soft cloths made from special fabric that would not scratch the piano's surface. There were gentle cleaning solutions that would not harm the wood or keys. Everything had to be done exactly right. Marcus listened carefully to every instruction. Mrs. Chen told him which direction to wipe the piano surface. She showed him how to clean between the keys without pressing them down. She explained how to polish the bench and music stand. Every detail was important. As they talked, Marcus noticed that Mrs. Chen really cared about the piano. She touched it gently like she was petting a beloved cat. She told him that this piano had brought joy to millions of people over the years. Every person who heard its music was changed by the experience. Mrs. Chen then told Marcus about the people who worked at the concert hall. There were musicians who practiced there every day. There were sound technicians who made sure everything sounded perfect. There were ushers who helped audience members find their seats. Everyone had to work together to create wonderful concerts. She explained that Marcus would mostly work alone in the early morning hours. The building would be quiet and peaceful. This was actually the best time to clean, she said, because there would be no one to disturb and no rush to finish quickly. Marcus asked questions about the schedule and the pay. Mrs. Chen explained that he would work 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. He would start at 6 in the morning and finish by noon. This would give him afternoons and evenings free. The pay was better than any job Marcus had found so far. As they walked back toward the lobby, Mrs. Chen asked Marcus if he had any other questions. He wanted to ask if he would ever be allowed to touch the piano keys just to see how they felt. But he knew that was not appropriate. He was being hired to clean, not to play. Mrs. Chen stopped at the main entrance and turned to Marcus. She said she had been impressed with his interview and his attitude. She believed he would take good care of the concert hall. She wanted to offer him the job starting Monday morning. Marcus felt relief wash over him like warm water. Finally, he would have steady work and steady pay. He would be able to pay his rent and buy food. He would have health insurance. These were things he had been worrying about for months, but there was another feeling mixed with his relief. He would be working in the most beautiful concert hall in the city. He would see that magnificent piano every single day. He would be surrounded by music and musicians. It was not the same as being a performer, but it was closer than he had been in months. Mrs. Chen shook Marcus's hand and welcomed him to the Harmony Concert Hall family. She told him to arrive at 6 o'clock sharp on Monday morning. She would be there to train him for his first day. She gave him a key card that would let him enter the building. As Marcus walked home, he felt a mixture of emotions. He was grateful to have found work, but he also felt like he was giving up on his dreams. Tomorrow he would call his parents and tell them about his new job. He would not mention that it was just cleaning work. He would let them think he had found something in music. That evening, Marcus sat at his old piano for the first time in weeks. He played a simple song, nothing fancy. His fingers felt stiff from not practicing, but the music still sounded beautiful to him. Maybe, he thought, being around music every day would help him remember why he loved it so much. Monday morning would be the beginning of a new chapter in Marcus's life. Marcus's alarm clock rang at 5:30 on Monday morning. He had barely slept all night. His mind kept thinking about his first day at the Harmony Concert Hall. He was excited and nervous at the same time. He got dressed quickly, in old jeans and a plain t-shirt. Mrs. Chen had told him to wear comfortable clothes that he did not mind getting dirty. He ate a quick breakfast of toast and coffee, then grabbed his jacket and headed out into the cool morning air. The streets were quiet at this early hour. Only a few cars drove by and most shops were still closed. Marcus liked this peaceful time of day. The city felt calm and full of possibilities. As he walked toward the concert hall, he could see the sun just starting to rise behind the tall buildings. When Marcus arrived at the concert hall, he used his new key card to enter through the back door. The building felt different in the early morning. The lights were dim and everything was perfectly quiet. His footsteps seemed extra loud as he walked through the empty hallways. Mrs. Chen was waiting for him in the supply room. She smiled and said good morning, then handed him a cart filled with cleaning supplies. She showed him where everything was kept: mops, vacuums, dusting cloths, and special cleaning solutions. Everything was organized neatly on shelves. For the first hour, Mrs. Chen worked alongside Marcus to show him exactly how to do each task. They started in the lobby, dusting the furniture and polishing the marble floors. Mrs. Chen was very particular about how things should be done. She showed Marcus the proper way to clean the glass doors so they would not have streaks. They moved through the building room by room. Marcus learned how to clean the practice rooms where musicians came to rehearse. Each room had a piano, but these were smaller and older than the magnificent grand piano on the main stage. Still, Mrs. Chen told him to treat each one with great care. The dressing rooms were next. These were where performers got ready before their concerts. Some had mirrors surrounded by bright light bulbs like in movies about theater. Mrs. Chen explained that famous musicians had used these rooms. She pointed to signatures on one wall where performers had written their names over the years. Finally, they reached the main concert hall. This was the most important part of Marcus's job, Mrs. Chen explained. The hall had to be perfect for every performance. Any speck of dust or smudge on the stage would be visible to the audience. Mrs. Chen led Marcus onto the stage. Being up there felt strange and wonderful. He could look out at all the empty red seats where audiences sat every night. The view was incredible. Marcus imagined what it would feel like to perform in front of all those people, but today he was here to clean. Mrs. Chen showed him how to sweep the stage floor in a specific pattern. She explained which cleaning solution to use on the wooden boards. Everything had to be done gently but thoroughly. Then came the moment Marcus had been both excited about and dreading. Mrs. Chen led him to the beautiful Steinway piano. Up close, it was even more magnificent than he had imagined. The black surface was so shiny that Marcus could see his reflection in it. Mrs. Chen opened the special cabinet and took out the piano cleaning supplies. She showed Marcus the soft cloths that felt like silk between his fingers. She demonstrated how to apply the gentle cleaning solution sparingly. Too much could damage the piano's finish. Marcus watched carefully as Mrs. Chen began cleaning the piano. She moved the cloth in smooth, circular motions across the surface. She was gentle but thorough, making sure every inch was perfectly clean. The piano seemed to glow under her careful attention. When it came time to clean the piano keys, Mrs. Chen was extra careful. She showed Marcus how to wipe each key individually with a slightly damp cloth. She warned him never to press down on the keys while cleaning them. The sound would echo through the empty hall and could disturb people in other parts of the building. As Mrs. Chen cleaned the keys, Marcus could not help but notice their beauty. The white keys were made of a special material that felt smooth and cool. The black keys had a different texture, slightly rougher but still elegant. Marcus's fingers tingled with the desire to touch them properly, to press them down and hear the sounds they would make. Mrs. Chen finished cleaning the piano and stepped back to admire her work. The instrument gleamed under the stage lights like a precious jewel. She turned to Marcus and said it was his turn to try. She would watch and guide him through the process. Marcus picked up the soft cloth with trembling hands. He was finally going to touch the famous piano, even if it was just to clean it. He began wiping the surface gently, copying the circular motions Mrs. Chen had shown him. The piano's surface was incredibly smooth under the cloth. As Marcus worked, he found himself thinking about all the famous pianists who had played this instrument. Their hands had touched these same keys. They had created beautiful music that filled this hall with joy. Now his hands were touching the same surface, even if he was just cleaning it. Mrs. Chen watched Marcus work and nodded approvingly. She could see that he was being very careful and gentle with the piano. She told him he was doing well and that he seemed to understand how special this instrument was. When Marcus finished cleaning the piano surface, Mrs. Chen told him to clean the keys. This was the most delicate part of the job. Marcus picked up a fresh cloth and began wiping the white keys one by one. Each key felt perfect under his touch, smooth and responsive. As Marcus cleaned the keys, he had to resist the urge to press them down. He wanted so badly to hear what this piano sounded like. He imagined the rich, clear tones that would fill the hall if he could just play one simple scale. But he knew he had to be professional. He was here to clean, not to play. Mrs. Chen seemed to sense Marcus's thoughts. She smiled and told him that the piano was indeed beautiful to hear as well as to see. She said that perhaps someday he would have the chance to hear it played by one of the great musicians who performed there. After they finished with the piano, Mrs. Chen showed Marcus how to clean the piano bench and music stand. Every part of the piano area had to be perfect. She explained that photographers often took pictures of the piano for newspapers and magazines. Any dust or smudges would show up in the photos. As they worked, Mrs. Chen told Marcus stories about some of the famous performers who had played on this stage. She had worked at the concert hall for 15 years and had met many incredible musicians. Some were kind and friendly, while others were more serious and focused on their music. She told Marcus about a young pianist who had made his debut at the hall just the year before. He had been so nervous that his hands were shaking, but when he sat down at the piano and began to play, his nervousness disappeared. The music was so beautiful that the entire audience was moved to tears. Marcus listened to these stories with fascination. He could picture these scenes happening on the very stage where he now stood. He imagined the excitement and energy that filled the hall during performances. He wished he could experience that feeling for himself. When they finished cleaning the stage area, Mrs. Chen and Marcus returned to the supply room. She showed him how to clean and store all the equipment properly. She emphasized that the piano cleaning cloths had to be washed separately from other cleaning materials. They could never be contaminated with harsh chemicals. Mrs. Chen looked at her watch and said they had finished right on time. The musicians would start arriving soon for their morning practice sessions. Marcus had done excellent work on his first day, and she was pleased with his attention to detail. As Marcus prepared to leave, Mrs. Chen reminded him of his schedule. He would work the same hours every day except Sunday. He should always arrive promptly at 6 o'clock and plan to finish by noon. If he ever had questions or problems, he should not hesitate to ask her. Marcus thanked Mrs. Chen for her patient training and headed toward the exit. As he walked through the quiet hallways, he felt proud of his work. He had taken good care of the beautiful concert hall, especially the magnificent piano. But as he reached the back door, Marcus could not stop thinking about how those piano keys had felt under his fingers. They had been so smooth and perfectly balanced. He wondered what music they would make if he could just touch them properly just once. Elena Rodriguez walked quickly through the parking lot of the Harmony Concert Hall. She was new to her job as event coordinator and wanted to make a good impression. Today was Tuesday, and she had arrived early to check on preparations for the evening's charity gala. This would be her first big event, and she was nervous about every detail. Elena had started working at the concert hall just 2 weeks ago. Before this, she had worked at a small theater across town. The Harmony Concert Hall was much bigger and more important. When she got the job, her family had been so proud. Her mother had cried with happiness. Elena came from a family that loved music. Her father played guitar at family gatherings, and her mother sang in the church choir. They had always dreamed of their daughter working in the music world. When Elena studied arts management in college, they supported her completely, even though they did not have much money. This morning, Elena had a long list of things to check. The charity gala was raising money for the Children's Hospital. Important people from the city would attend, including the mayor and several wealthy donors. Everything had to be perfect. Elena entered the concert hall through the main entrance. She loved walking into the beautiful lobby every morning. The marble floors and crystal chandeliers made her feel like she was in a palace. She still could not believe this was her workplace. She went to her office first to review her checklist. The flowers would be delivered at 10 o'clock. The catering staff would arrive at noon to set up the reception area. The sound technicians would test all the equipment in the afternoon. The guest pianist would arrive at 4 o'clock for a final rehearsal. Elena looked at her watch. It was 7:30 in the morning. She had plenty of time to walk through the building and make sure everything was ready. She wanted to check the main hall first, since that was where the concert would take place. As Elena walked toward the main hall, she heard something that made her stop. Music was coming from inside the hall. Beautiful piano music that seemed to float through the air like silk. She was confused because the rehearsal was not scheduled until the afternoon. Elena checked her schedule again. No one was supposed to be using the hall this early in the morning. The guest pianist was not arriving until much later. Who could be playing the piano? She walked quietly toward the main hall and carefully opened one of the heavy doors. She peeked inside and saw someone sitting at the grand piano on the stage. It was not the famous pianist who was scheduled to perform that evening. This person was wearing work clothes, old jeans and a plain shirt. Elena slipped inside the hall and hid behind one of the curtains at the back. From there, she could see and hear without being noticed. The person playing was a young man she did not recognize. He was completely absorbed in his music, his eyes closed as his fingers moved across the keys. The music was incredibly beautiful. Elena had heard many professional pianists perform in this hall, but this was something special. The young man was playing a piece she did not recognize. It sounded like he had written it himself. The melody was both sad and hopeful, like someone remembering a beautiful dream. Elena found herself holding her breath as she listened. The music seemed to tell a story without words. She could feel the emotions in every note, longing, disappointment, but also deep love for the music itself. Whoever this young man was, he was extraordinarily talented. As Elena watched, she noticed how the pianist's hands moved across the keys. He played with complete confidence and skill. His technique was flawless, but more than that, he played with real feeling. Every note seemed to come from his heart. The piece built to a beautiful climax, then ended with a gentle, fading melody. When the last note died away, the hall was completely silent. The young man sat at the piano for a moment as if he was reluctant to break the spell of the music. Then suddenly, he seemed to remember where he was. His eyes opened wide and he looked around nervously. He quickly stood up from the piano bench and returned to a cleaning cart that Elena had not noticed before. Now she understood. This was one of the maintenance workers. Elena watched as the young man hurriedly began polishing the piano, as if he was trying to erase any evidence that he had been playing. He kept looking around nervously, clearly worried that someone might have heard him. He had no idea that Elena was watching from behind the curtain. Elena was amazed by what she had witnessed. This maintenance worker was clearly a trained musician. His playing was professional level, maybe even better than some of the performers who gave concerts at the hall. What was someone with such talent doing working as a cleaner? Elena wanted to step out from behind the curtain and talk to the young man. She wanted to ask him about his music and his background, but she could see how nervous he was and she did not want to embarrass him. Instead, she quietly slipped out of the hall without making a sound. As Elena walked back to her office, she could not stop thinking about what she had heard. The music had been so beautiful and moving. The young man obviously loved playing piano, and he was incredibly gifted. But he seemed afraid of being caught, as if he was doing something wrong. Elena sat at her desk and tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept returning to the mysterious pianist. She found herself humming the melody he had played. It was stuck in her head like a song she had known all her life. During her lunch break, Elena asked Mrs. Chen about the maintenance staff. She tried to sound casual, as if she was just making conversation. Mrs. Chen told her about the different workers, including a new young man named Marcus who took care of the main hall and stage area. Mrs. Chen spoke highly of Marcus. She said he was reliable and careful with his work. He treated the concert hall with respect and seemed to understand how special it was. Mrs. Chen mentioned that Marcus was very gentle with the piano, more so than some of the previous maintenance workers. Elena asked a few more questions about Marcus, trying to learn more without seeming too curious. Mrs. Chen said he was quiet and polite, always arriving early and staying late if needed. She had no complaints about his work at all. That afternoon, Elena found excuses to walk through the main hall several times. She hoped to see Marcus and maybe hear him play again. But each time she went there, the hall was empty or occupied by other staff members preparing for the evening's event. As the day went on, Elena became more and more curious about Marcus. She wondered what his story was. How had he learned to play piano so beautifully? Why was he working as a maintenance worker instead of performing professionally? Had he studied music in college or was he self-taught? Elena also found herself thinking about the upcoming charity gala. The guest pianist who was scheduled to perform was technically excellent, but Elena wondered if he would play with the same emotion and passion she had heard from Marcus that morning. When evening came, the charity gala went smoothly. The guest pianist performed well, and the audience applauded politely. The event raised a good amount of money for the children's hospital. Elena should have been happy with her success, but throughout the evening, Elena kept thinking about the music she had heard that morning. She kept looking around the hall, hoping to see Marcus somewhere. She wanted to tell him how beautiful his playing had been, even though she was not supposed to have heard it. As the guests left and the cleaning staff began their work, Elena finally saw Marcus. He was quietly stacking chairs in the lobby, working efficiently but staying out of everyone's way. Up close, Elena could see that he was about her age, with kind eyes and gentle hands. Elena wanted to approach Marcus and talk to him about his music. But she hesitated. What if he was embarrassed about being caught playing the piano? What if he thought he might get in trouble for using the instrument? She did not want to cause any problems for him. Instead, Elena just watched Marcus work. She could see the same careful attention to detail that Mrs. Chen had mentioned. But now Elena also noticed something else, the way Marcus looked at the piano. Even while he was cleaning around it, his eyes would drift to the keys. There was longing in his expression, as if he was thinking about the music locked inside that beautiful instrument. That night, Elena went home with a plan forming in her mind. She did not know exactly what she would do, but she knew she had to find a way to help Marcus. Someone with that much musical talent should not have to hide it. The world deserved to hear the beautiful music he could create. As Elena fell asleep, she was still humming the melody Marcus had played that morning. She had a feeling that hearing his music was going to change her life, though she did not yet know how. The next morning started like any other Wednesday at the Harmony Concert Hall. Elena arrived at her office early, as had become her habit. She was still thinking about Marcus and the beautiful music she had heard him play. She had spent most of the night wondering how she could help him without making him uncomfortable. Elena was busy reviewing plans for next week's concert when her phone rang. It was Dr. Patricia Williams, the director of the Children's Hospital. Elena recognized her voice immediately, as they had worked together on the previous night's charity gala. Dr. Williams sounded upset and stressed. She explained that there was a crisis with tonight's fundraising concert. The featured pianist, Jonathan Moore, had been rushed to the hospital with severe food poisoning. He was too sick to perform and would need several days to recover. Elena felt her heart sink. Tonight's concert was crucial for the Children's Hospital. They needed the money to buy new medical equipment for the pediatric ward. The tickets had been sold weeks ago and many important donors were planning to attend. Canceling the event would be a financial disaster for the hospital. Dr. Williams asked if Elena could find a replacement pianist on such short notice. Elena promised to try, but she knew it would be nearly impossible. Professional pianists usually had their schedules planned months in advance. Finding someone available tonight would be like finding a needle in a haystack. After hanging up the phone, Elena immediately began making calls. She contacted music agencies, local conservatories, and every pianist she could think of. One by one, they all told her the same thing. They were either booked for other performances or needed more time to prepare. As the morning went on, Elena became more desperate. She called pianists in other cities, hoping someone might be willing to travel for the performance. But the short notice made it impossible. Even pianists who were available could not learn the required pieces in just a few hours. By noon, Elena had exhausted every option she could think of. She sat at her desk feeling defeated. The Children's Hospital was counting on tonight's fundraiser, and she was about to let them down. There had to be someone who could help, but she could not think of anyone else to call. That was when Elena remembered Marcus and his beautiful playing. She thought about the emotion and skill she had witnessed that morning when he played alone on the stage. He was clearly talented enough to perform professionally, but would he be willing to help? And more importantly, would Mrs. Chen and the hall's management allow it? Elena knew this was a crazy idea. Marcus was a maintenance worker, not a professional performer. She did not even know if he could play the pieces required for tonight's concert. But desperate times called for desperate measures, and she was running out of options. Elena decided she had to at least try. She left her office and went looking for Marcus. She found him in the main hall, carefully dusting the seats in preparation for tonight's performance. He looked up when she approached, clearly surprised that someone in management wanted to talk to him. Elena introduced herself and explained that she was the event coordinator. Marcus nodded politely but seemed nervous about why she wanted to speak with him. Elena could tell he was worried that he might have done something wrong. Taking a deep breath, Elena decided to be direct. She told Marcus that she had heard him playing piano yesterday morning. She watched his face carefully and saw a look of panic cross his features. He started to apologize, saying he knew he should not have touched the piano. Elena quickly reassured Marcus that he was not in trouble. In fact, she told him his playing had been beautiful. She had been amazed by his talent and skill. Marcus looked confused and surprised by her praise. He clearly had not expected this reaction. Elena then explained the situation with tonight's concert. She told Marcus about the sick pianist and the desperate need for a replacement. She asked if he would consider performing in the fundraiser. The children's hospital really needed the money, and he was the only pianist she could find on such short notice. Marcus stared at Elena in shock. He could not believe what she was asking. Perform on the main stage of the Harmony Concert Hall? In front of hundreds of important people? The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. Marcus told Elena that he appreciated her confidence in him, but he was just a maintenance worker. He had never performed professionally. He did not have the right clothes or experience for such an important event. Surely there had to be other options. Elena explained that she had spent the entire morning calling every pianist she could think of. Marcus was truly her last hope. She told him about the children who would benefit from the fundraiser. They needed new medical equipment that could save lives. Would he at least consider helping? Marcus felt torn between excitement and fear. Part of him had always dreamed of performing on a real concert stage. But another part of him was terrified of failing in front of so many people. What if he made mistakes? What if he embarrassed himself in the concert hall? Elena could see Marcus struggling with the decision. She told him that she had heard enough of his playing to know he was talented. She believed he could do this. But she also understood that it was a big decision, and she did not want to pressure him. Marcus asked Elena what pieces he would need to play. She showed him the program for the evening. There were 3 pieces: a Chopin nocturne, a Mozart sonata, and a piece by a contemporary composer that most people would not recognize. Marcus was familiar with the Chopin and Mozart, though he had never performed them for an audience. Elena suggested that Marcus could also include some of his own music if he wanted. She had been impressed by the original piece she heard him play. Personal compositions often moved audiences more than familiar classical pieces. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, thinking about everything Elena had said. He thought about the sick children who needed medical equipment. He thought about his dreams of performing music professionally. He thought about the beautiful piano sitting on the stage, waiting for someone to bring it to life. Finally, Marcus looked at Elena and asked what would happen if he said yes. Elena explained that he would need to rehearse this afternoon to become familiar with the hall's acoustics. The concert would begin at 8 o'clock, and he would perform for about an hour with a brief intermission. Elena also mentioned the practical concerns. Marcus would need appropriate concert clothes. Elena said she could arrange to borrow or rent a tuxedo for him. She would also need to get approval from Mrs. Chen and the hall's management for this unusual situation. Marcus realized this was probably his only chance to perform on a professional stage. If he said no, he might regret it for the rest of his life. The children who needed medical equipment were counting on tonight's fundraiser. Maybe he could help them while also fulfilling his own dream. Taking a deep breath, Marcus told Elena that he would do it. He would perform in tonight's concert. Elena's face lit up with relief and gratitude. She thanked Marcus repeatedly and promised to take care of all the arrangements. Elena immediately went to find Mrs. Chen to explain the situation. She was nervous about how her supervisor would react to such an unusual request. When Elena found Mrs. Chen in her office and explained about the sick pianist and Marcus's talent, Mrs. Chen was initially skeptical, but Elena was persuasive. She reminded Mrs. Chen that the Children's Hospital fundraiser was an important community event. Canceling it would hurt the hall's reputation and disappoint many donors. If Marcus could save the concert, it would reflect well on everyone involved. Mrs. Chen agreed to listen to Marcus play before making a final decision. Elena brought Marcus to the main hall, where he sat at the grand piano and played the same piece Elena had heard yesterday morning. Mrs. Chen listened with amazement as the beautiful music filled the hall. When Marcus finished playing, Mrs. Chen was convinced. She agreed to let him perform in tonight's concert. She told Elena to make sure Marcus had everything he needed to succeed. The reputation of the Harmony Concert Hall was now in his hands. Elena spent the rest of the afternoon making arrangements. She found a tuxedo in Marcus's size and arranged for it to be delivered to the hall. She worked with the sound technicians to make sure everything would be perfect for the performance. Meanwhile, Marcus practiced on the piano, becoming familiar with how it sounded in the large hall. The acoustics were different from anything he had experienced before. Every note seemed to hang in the air and blend with the next, creating a rich tapestry of sound. As evening approached, Marcus felt his nervousness growing. In just a few hours, he would be performing in front of a large audience. His dream was about to come true, but he was terrified that he might not be good enough for such an important moment. Evening arrived faster than Marcus had expected. He stood in the small dressing room backstage looking at himself in the mirror. The borrowed tuxedo fit surprisingly well, though it felt strange and formal compared to his usual work clothes. His hands were shaking slightly and his mouth felt dry. Elena knocked on the dressing room door and asked if she could come in. Marcus called for her to enter, grateful for any distraction from his growing nervousness. Elena smiled when she saw him in the tuxedo. She told him he looked like a professional concert pianist. Elena had brought Marcus a bottle of water and some simple food. She knew that performers needed to eat something before going on stage, but not too much that might make them uncomfortable. Marcus tried to eat a few crackers, but his stomach was too nervous to handle much food. Outside in the main hall, people were beginning to arrive for the concert. Marcus could hear the sound of voices and footsteps as the audience found their seats. Elena told him that the hall was filling up quickly. Many important people from the city had come to support the Children's Hospital fundraiser. Marcus asked Elena about the audience. She explained that there would be about 1,500 people tonight. Some were wealthy donors who regularly attended charity events. Others were music lovers who came to all the concerts at the hall. There would also be doctors and nurses from the Children's Hospital. Elena could see that Marcus was getting more nervous as showtime approached. She sat down beside him and spoke in a calm, reassuring voice. She reminded him that she had heard him play, and she knew he was talented enough for this performance. The audience would be lucky to hear his music. Marcus told Elena that he had never performed for more than a few dozen people before. In college, his biggest performance had been at a student recital with maybe 50 people in the audience. The idea of playing for 1,500 people seemed impossible. Elena reminded Marcus why he was doing this. The Children's Hospital desperately needed the money that tonight's concert would raise. The new medical equipment could help save the lives of sick children. His music could make a real difference in the world. Marcus nodded and tried to focus on that thought. He was not just playing for himself or for the audience. He was playing for children who needed help. That gave his performance a purpose beyond his own dreams and fears. A sound technician knocked on the door and told them it was almost time. The house lights were dimming, and the audience was settling into their seats. Marcus would go on stage in 5 minutes. Marcus felt his heart start beating faster. Elena walked with Marcus toward the stage. They could hear Mrs. Chen speaking to the audience through a microphone, explaining the situation with the original pianist's illness. She was introducing Marcus as a talented local musician who had graciously agreed to perform on short notice. Standing in the wings beside the stage, Marcus could see the audience for the first time. The concert hall was completely full. People filled every seat from the front row all the way up to the balcony. The sight was both inspiring and terrifying. Elena squeezed Marcus's hand and whispered words of encouragement. She told him to remember how beautiful his music sounded and to trust in his talent. Then she gave him a gentle push toward the stage as Mrs. Chen finished her introduction. Marcus walked out onto the stage, and the audience applauded politely. The stage lights were bright and warm, making it difficult to see individual faces in the crowd. In some ways, this was a relief. He could focus on the piano instead of worrying about who was watching him. The grand piano sat in the center of the stage like a sleeping giant. Marcus approached it slowly, running his hand along its polished surface. This was the same piano he had been cleaning every morning for weeks. Now he was going to make music with it in front of all these people. Marcus sat down on the piano bench and adjusted it to the right height. He placed his hands on the keys and took a deep breath. The hall was completely quiet now. 1,500 people were waiting to hear what sounds he would create. For a moment, Marcus felt overwhelmed by the silence and expectation. His hands felt frozen on the keys. What if he forgot how to play? What if his fingers would not move the way they were supposed to? What if he disappointed everyone who was counting on him? Then Marcus closed his eyes and thought about the children in the hospital. He pictured them lying in beds, waiting for new equipment that could help them get better. He thought about their families, hoping and praying for their recovery. His music could help make that possible. Marcus began to play the Chopin nocturne he had chosen to open the concert. The first notes rang out clear and pure in the perfect acoustics of the hall. As soon as he heard the sound, Marcus felt his nervousness begin to fade. The piano responded beautifully to his touch, just as he had hoped it would. The Chopin piece was gentle and lyrical, perfect for drawing the audience into the music. Marcus played with careful attention to every phrase and dynamic marking. He had practiced this piece many times, and now it flowed from his fingers like a familiar conversation. As Marcus played, he began to feel more confident. The piano was cooperating perfectly, and his fingers remembered exactly what to do. He could sense the audience listening intently. The hall was so quiet that every note seemed to hang in the air before blending into the next. When the Chopin piece ended, the audience applauded warmly. Marcus felt a rush of relief and pleasure. The first piece had gone well. He was actually doing this, performing on the stage of the Harmony Concert Hall. For his second piece, Marcus had chosen a Mozart sonata. This music was more technical and challenging, requiring precise fingerwork and careful attention to rhythm. But Marcus had always loved Mozart's clarity and elegance. The music felt like mathematical perfection translated into sound. As Marcus played the Mozart, he began to relax and enjoy himself. He could feel his technique settling into the familiar patterns he had practiced for years. His fingers moved across the keys with confidence and accuracy. The piano sang with pure, crystalline tones that filled every corner of the hall. The audience was completely absorbed in the music. Marcus could sense their attention and appreciation, even though he could not see their faces clearly. There was an energy in the room that made him want to play even better. When the Mozart sonata concluded, the applause was even stronger than before. Marcus stood and bowed slightly, the way he had seen professional pianists do in videos. He was starting to feel like maybe he belonged on this stage after all. For his final piece before intermission, Marcus had decided to play one of his own compositions. This was the piece that Elena had first heard him play in the empty hall. It was personal and emotional, representing his own journey as a musician. Marcus sat back down at the piano and spoke briefly to the audience. He explained that this last piece was his own composition, inspired by his love of music and his dreams of sharing it with others. He dedicated the performance to all the children who would benefit from tonight's fundraiser. When Marcus began playing his own music, something magical happened. All his nervousness disappeared completely. This was his music born from his own heart and experiences. He did not have to worry about playing someone else's piece perfectly. He could simply express himself through the piano. The composition told the story of a young person who loved music, but had lost hope of making it his career. It had moments of sadness and disappointment, but also passages of beauty and longing. The ending was hopeful, suggesting that dreams might still come true in unexpected ways. As Marcus played his composition, he poured all his emotions into the music. He thought about his struggles to find work as a musician. He thought about the months of cleaning jobs and financial worry. He thought about his dreams that had seemed so far away. And he thought about this incredible moment when everything had changed. The audience was completely silent as Marcus played. They could hear the emotion and sincerity in every note. This was not just technical skill. This was a young man sharing his heart through music. Many people in the audience felt moved to tears by the beauty and honesty of what they were hearing. When Marcus played the final notes of his composition, the hall remained silent for several seconds. Then the audience erupted in the most enthusiastic applause of the evening. People stood up and clapped, showing their appreciation for the beautiful music they had just experienced. The applause seemed to go on forever. Marcus stood at the piano bench, hardly believing what was happening. The entire audience was on their feet, clapping with genuine enthusiasm. He had never experienced anything like this before. The sound of 1,500 people showing their appreciation was overwhelming and wonderful. Marcus bowed again, deeper this time as he had seen famous musicians do. He looked toward the wings and saw Elena watching from beside the stage. She was clapping and had tears of joy in her eyes. Her face showed pride and happiness as if she had been the one performing. Mrs. Chen was also watching from the side of the stage. She looked amazed and proud. She had taken a big risk allowing an unknown maintenance worker to perform at such an important event. Now she could see that her decision had been exactly right. As the applause finally began to fade, Marcus walked off the stage for intermission. His heart was pounding with excitement and adrenaline. He could hardly believe what had just happened. The audience had loved his music, especially his own composition. For the first time in months, he felt like a real musician again. Elena met Marcus backstage and hugged him tightly. She told him his performance had been absolutely beautiful. She had been watching the audience during his original composition, and she could see how moved they were by his music. Some people had been wiping tears from their eyes. During the 15-minute intermission, Marcus tried to calm himself down and prepare for the second half of the concert. He drank some water and took deep breaths. He could hear the excited conversation of the audience members as they discussed what they had just heard. Elena told Marcus that several audience members had already asked her who he was and where he had studied music. Word was spreading through the crowd that this young pianist was someone special. People were curious about his background and whether he had made any recordings. Mrs. Chen came backstage to check on Marcus. She told him that she was receiving compliments from audience members who were impressed by his performance. She said she had never seen such an enthusiastic response to the first half of a concert. The Children's Hospital fundraiser was definitely going to be a success. Marcus felt nervous again as the intermission ended, and it was time to return to the stage. But this was a different kind of nervousness, the excitement of an athlete before the big game, rather than the fear of someone who did not belong. He had proven to himself and to the audience that he could do this. The second half of the concert went even better than the first. Marcus played 2 more classical pieces, including a technically challenging Liszt composition that showed off his skill and training. His confidence grew with each piece, and he began to feel truly comfortable on the stage. For his final piece of the evening, Marcus chose another of his own compositions. This one was more upbeat and hopeful than the first. It celebrated the joy of music and the connections between people that music could create. As he played, Marcus thought about all the people in the audience who had come together to support sick children. When Marcus played the last notes of the final piece, the audience response was even more enthusiastic than before. People jumped to their feet immediately, clapping and cheering. The standing ovation lasted for several minutes, with the applause getting louder instead of fading away. Marcus bowed repeatedly, overwhelmed by the audience's appreciation. He had never imagined that his music could create such a response. People were shouting "Bravo!" and "Encore!" The energy in the hall was electric and joyful. Finally, Marcus sat back down at the piano to play one brief encore piece. He chose a simple, beautiful melody that he had written years ago when he first started composing. It was gentle and peaceful, a perfect way to end the evening. The audience listened in complete silence, savoring every note. When the encore finished, the standing ovation resumed with even more enthusiasm. Marcus could see people in the front rows with tears on their faces. Others were smiling broadly and clapping as hard as they could. The response was beyond anything he had ever dreamed possible. Elena appeared on stage with a bouquet of flowers for Marcus. As she handed them to him, she whispered that this had been the most successful fundraising concert in the history of the Children's Hospital. The evening had raised far more money than they had expected, thanks to the incredible response to his music. Marcus finally left the stage, but the applause continued. People in the audience were reluctant to leave, still talking excitedly about what they had heard. Many approached the stage area, hoping to speak with Marcus or learn more about him. Backstage, Marcus was surrounded by well-wishers. Dr. Williams from the Children's Hospital thanked him personally for saving their fundraiser. She told him that the money raised tonight would allow them to buy life-saving equipment for the pediatric ward. His music had literally helped to save children's lives. Several professional musicians who had been in the audience came backstage to meet Marcus. They were impressed by his talent and wanted to know about his musical background. Some offered to help him make connections in the professional music world. A music critic from the city's largest newspaper asked to interview Marcus. He said the performance had been one of the most moving concerts he had attended in years. He wanted to write an article about Marcus and his music for the Sunday Arts section. As the evening wound down and people began to leave, Elena and Marcus found a quiet moment to talk. Elena told Marcus that she was so proud of him and grateful that she had been brave enough to ask him to perform. She said watching him on stage had been one of the most inspiring experiences of her life. Marcus thanked Elena for believing in him when he had stopped believing in himself. He said that without her encouragement, he would never have had the courage to step onto that stage. She had changed his life by giving him this opportunity. Mrs. Chen joined their conversation and told Marcus that his position at the concert hall was secure for as long as he wanted it. But she suggested that he might want to consider other opportunities that were likely to come his way after tonight's performance. As Marcus finally left the concert hall that night, he felt like a completely different person than the one who had arrived that morning. He had gone from being an unknown maintenance worker to a celebrated performer in the space of one evening. His life had changed forever. Walking home through the quiet streets, Marcus replayed the entire evening in his mind. He thought about the moment when he first sat down at the piano in front of all those people. He remembered the feeling of the music flowing through his fingers. Most of all, he remembered the incredible sound of 1,500 people applauding his music. For the first time in months, Marcus felt truly hopeful about his future. He did not know exactly what would happen next, but he knew that tonight had opened doors that had been closed before. His dream of being a professional musician was no longer just a fantasy. It was becoming a reality. As Marcus reached his apartment, he realized that he was not the same person who had left that morning to go to his cleaning job. Tonight he had become the musician he had always known he could be. The journey was just beginning, but the first and most important step had been taken. Marcus fell asleep that night with the sound of applause still ringing in his ears and the feeling of piano keys still tingling in his fingertips. Tomorrow would bring new possibilities and new challenges, but tonight had proven that dreams could indeed come true in the most unexpected ways. 6 months had passed since that magical night when Marcus first performed at the Harmony Concert Hall. His life had changed in ways he never could have imagined. The newspaper article about his performance had brought attention from music agents and concert promoters. Soon, Marcus was no longer cleaning the concert hall. He was performing in it regularly as the resident pianist. The transition had not been easy. Marcus had to learn how to handle the business side of being a professional musician. He needed to understand contracts, scheduling, and publicity. Thankfully, Elena had been there to help him navigate this new world. She had become not just his colleague, but his closest friend and advisor. As the months went by, Marcus and Elena had grown closer in other ways too. They often stayed late at the concert hall after his performances, talking about music, dreams, and life. Elena would tell Marcus about her ideas for new events and concerts. Marcus would play quiet pieces on the piano while Elena listened from the empty seats. Their friendship had slowly blossomed into something deeper. They discovered they shared many of the same values and interests. Both loved music, but they also cared about using their talents to help others. The Children's Hospital fundraiser had been the first of many charity events they organized together. Marcus had become a local celebrity, but fame had not changed his humble nature. He still remembered what it felt like to struggle and worry about paying bills. This made him appreciate his success even more. He often performed at benefit concerts for causes he believed in, never forgetting how music had changed his own life. Elena had been promoted to head event coordinator after the success of the fundraising concert. Her supervisor had been impressed with how she handled the crisis of the sick pianist. Elena's quick thinking and faith in Marcus had saved the event and established her reputation as someone who could solve problems creatively. Now, on a warm spring evening exactly 6 months after that first performance, Marcus had a special plan. He had convinced Mrs. Chen to let him use the concert hall for a private event. He told her he wanted to practice a new piece in the perfect acoustics of the main hall. Mrs. Chen had agreed, not knowing that Marcus had something much more important in mind. Marcus arrived at the concert hall as the sun was setting. He used his key to enter through the main entrance, just as he had done when he was the maintenance worker. But tonight felt completely different. Tonight he was here to take the biggest risk of his life. Marcus had spent weeks planning this evening. He had arranged for hundreds of small candles to be placed around the stage and in the aisles of the concert hall. Earlier that day, a florist had delivered roses that Marcus had personally arranged throughout the space. The concert hall looked like a fairy tale setting. In his pocket, Marcus carried a small velvet box. Inside was an engagement ring that had belonged to his grandmother. It was simple but beautiful, with a single diamond that sparkled like the stage lights. Marcus had been carrying it for 2 weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. Elena arrived at the concert hall at 8 o'clock, exactly as Marcus had requested. He had told her he wanted her opinion on a new composition he was working on. Elena was always willing to listen to Marcus's music and offer her thoughts. She had no idea what was really waiting for her. When Elena entered the main hall, she gasped in amazement. The space was transformed by the candlelight and flowers. It looked like something from a romantic movie. Elena called out Marcus's name, wondering what was happening. Marcus appeared on the stage, dressed in the same tuxedo he had worn for his first performance 6 months ago. He smiled at Elena and asked her to take a seat in the front row. He said he had something special to share with her, a new piece that he had written just for her. Elena sat down, still amazed by the beautiful setting Marcus had created. She watched as he walked to the grand piano, the same piano where their story had begun. The candlelight flickered across the polished surface, making it glow like a jewel. Marcus sat down at the piano and began to play. The music he had composed was the most beautiful piece Elena had ever heard. It told the story of their relationship, starting with the day she first heard him playing in the empty hall. The melody captured their friendship, their shared work, and the growing love between them. As Marcus played, Elena listened with tears in her eyes. She could hear their entire story in the music, the nervousness of their first meeting, the excitement of his successful performance, the quiet moments they had shared talking and planning together. The music spoke of gratitude, friendship, and deep, lasting love. The composition built to a beautiful climax that expressed pure joy and hope for the future. Then it settled into a gentle, romantic melody that seemed to ask a question. When the last notes faded away, the hall was filled with the soft glow of candlelight and the scent of roses. Marcus stood up from the piano and walked down from the stage to where Elena was sitting. She was wiping tears from her eyes, moved by the beautiful music he had created for her. Marcus took her hands in his and looked into her eyes. Marcus told Elena that she had changed his life in every possible way. She had believed in his music when he had stopped believing in himself. She had given him the courage to step onto the stage and pursue his dreams. More than that, she had shown him what it meant to truly care about another person. Elena listened as Marcus spoke about their months together. He told her how much he admired her kindness, her intelligence, and her passion for helping others. He said that performing music was wonderful, but sharing his life with her would be the greatest joy he could imagine. Then Marcus got down on one knee beside Elena's seat. He pulled out the small velvet box and opened it to reveal his grandmother's ring. The diamond caught the candlelight and sparkled like a tiny star. Elena put her hands to her mouth in surprise and delight. Marcus asked Elena to marry him. He said he wanted to spend the rest of his life making beautiful music and beautiful memories with her. He promised to love her, support her dreams, and be grateful every day for the gift of her presence in his life. Elena was crying with happiness as she said yes. She told Marcus that she had fallen in love with him gradually, first with his music and then with his kind heart and gentle spirit. She said she could not imagine a more perfect proposal or a more wonderful partner for life's journey. Marcus slipped the ring onto Elena's finger, and they embraced in the candlelit concert hall where their love story had begun. The space that had once seemed so formal and intimidating now felt warm and intimate, filled with their hopes and dreams for the future. As they held each other, Marcus and Elena could hear the faint echo of beautiful music in the air around them. It might have been the memory of all the concerts that had taken place in this hall, or it might have been the sound of their own hearts beating in harmony. They stayed in the concert hall for hours that night, talking about their future together. They made plans for their wedding, which would of course include music performed on the grand piano that had brought them together. They talked about the concerts they would organize and the good causes they would support. Marcus played several more pieces for Elena as the candles burned lower around them. Some were classical pieces they both loved, and others were new compositions that expressed his feelings for her. Elena listened to each one with joy, knowing that she would hear his music every day for the rest of their lives. When they finally left the concert hall that night, Marcus and Elena walked hand in hand through the quiet streets. The ring on Elena's finger caught the light from the street lamps, reminding them both of the promise they had made to each other. Their story had begun with Marcus being told to clean a piano. It had continued with a performance that changed his life. Now it was entering a new chapter with a proposal that would bind their lives together forever. The music that had brought them together would be the soundtrack to their shared future, filled with love, purpose, and endless beautiful melodies. As they reached Elena's apartment, she turned to Marcus and told him that she loved him. Marcus replied that he loved her too, and that every day with her would be like a new song waiting to be discovered. Their love story was just beginning, but they both knew it would be as beautiful and lasting as the music that had brought them together in the magical concert hall where dreams come true.